Hi, it's Brian. I hope you're doing all right. I'm sorry if the light in the back window is too bright for a good recording, but I was just didn't have a whole lot of time this morning, but I thought I might mention something as if I were either Putin or maybe even Trump, or some of the effects over time. Um, you know, Effects over time as far as CIA goes. Since 1946 or 7, we've, I guess, been involved. I don't know whether it's 60 or 80 coups or interventions and things like that. And uh, CIA came up with a term called blowback. When you overthrow somebody or do something and it has adverse effects. And a lot of the stuff has got a lot of blowback. I mean, actually, we've been doing stuff even before World War II. Some of the banana republics, if a group of people say, hey, Chiquita or whatever company has got the fruit market internationally, and the peasants are not getting paid a decent living wage, and they revolt, and we kind of, try to put pressure on for big money, even even a long time ago in the 20s and 30s of the last century. So that way, it'll maintain. I don't mind. Let the people make a little more money. And if bananas cost a few cents more or a little more money, that's fine. And maybe the people at the top of the company don't have to, earn quite so much. Usually, when you do something and bring a people up in your time of need, they're going to come back and help you. But anyway, as far as Putin, as if I were Putin. Now, Azerbaijan, you know, there was a aircraft that was a civilian aircraft flying from Baku up into Russia, and Azerbaijan is a mostly Muslim with a Turkish background on the people, but it used to be part of the Soviet Union, and they maintained pretty good relations, even though Azerbaijan has been supplying oil to Israel, but and also are friendly with Turkey. And Turkey's kind of waiting, is they're part of NATO, but they we had some Al Qaeda trainees. I mean, the person we put, Jolani, into Syria is ex Nusra, Al Nusra, Al Qaeda, basically a terrorist. I don't know why we working with somebody that was Al Qaeda. But anyway, the CIA helped fund his more training, military training in Turkey. Turkey really wouldn't mind, I guess, expanding the Ottoman Empire a little bit back up. So they're wanting to get a little bit of Syria, but they're kind of have the same goals at the time being as Israel, because they took out Turkey or Syria. But the funny thing is, well, anyway, we don't even know in Syria, the leader of Syria, he was. We don't know if some of it may have been a false flag operation, how many chemical weapons he was really using, and then a lot of the stuff that stirred up Bashar al-Assad. He had some chemical weapons, but it might have been false flag. I don't know who's digging into that, whether anybody even wants to be digging into that. But I know we supplied chemical weapons, to Hussein in the Iraq war against Iran when we were friends with Hussein, and that shouldn't have been legal. We also gave him the antidote to atropine, so, and I know Hussein, I saw the pictures of him putting chemicals on some of the Kurds, like the woman holding the baby, and it was awful. But I didn't realize we supplied him the actual chemicals to fight against Iran. That's crazy. I thought we just supplied the the atropine to fight, in case somebody else had chemical weapons. But I guess we were actually supplying chemical weapons. But anyway, we're getting back to Putin, because Putin, he did have a deal where he thought there was just too many nuclear weapons, too many biological plants, and too much buildup in Ukraine, that he finally, and of course, he annexed after we had in 2014, we had put in, the person that was elected, we put somebody else in so he finally annexed, because some of the Ukrainians had killed some Russian-speaking people, weren't allowed Russian-speaking and that kind of stuff. And of course, I understand why some Ukrainians would hate Russians because of what Stalin did. So it's a mess. But, actually Putin is kind of sharp. He kissed the Quran, because he's got a lot of Muslim people in what's now Russia. So doing that was a smart move, saying, hey, we're letting the Orthodox Christians, we don't have problems with Muslims. But I think he made a little bit of a mistake, and hopefully he's not as arrogant as Bush Sr. When Bush Sr., there was apparently accidentally we shot down a airplane, during the Iraq War, and that airplane, it was an Iranian airplane with 290 passengers, and it went down. He said he wasn't going to apologize for that. Well, Russia now, there was another plane, an Azerbaijani plane, that was shot down. Now, Russia was using some stuff to confuse drones. So the plane's navigational equipment was getting a little confused, but it was flying from Baku to a place up in Russia, and because there's Russians in Azerbaijan, or Russian-speaking people travel back and forth, and it was shot down. And then Putin says, oh, it was a bunch of birds. But then the plane, some of them survived. The guy was able to kind of land. Maybe 30% of the passengers survived. It wasn't as many as the Iranian plane that was shot down by the U.S. But anyway, they looked and they saw the holes in the fuselage and tail and said, no, that was a rocket. So the smartest thing for Putin to do right now would be say, look, because he said, oh, I'm sorry it happened, but he says, oh, it was a bird strike, and he just didn't want to fess up. He should say, look, I'm sorry, we were kind of in a war zone, and we apologize, and I want to compensate all the victims and the victims' families, and he didn't do that. So I hope he does it, because he needs to not stir up something with Azerbaijan, because, they're supplying Israel, and they're kind of working with Turkey, and it's, causing too many divisions. People need to work more together, and I think our country, so like I say, if I was Putin, I would apologize for the plane that went down and try to make amends, and not be causing another war. And he needs to try to finish off the Ukraine thing. I wish they could come to an agreement, and because it's just too many Ukrainians are dying. And I know the mainstream media tries to say there's 1 million Russians and 1 million Ukrainians, but I think it's a little more like 1.5 million Ukrainians, and maybe 200,000 or 300,000 Russians. But they're dragging people off the street, making them fight in Ukraine, and a lot of them don't want to fight. So I hope that is resolved. But now, if I was President Trump, I wouldn't be sending any more weapons to Ukraine. I'd say, look, work it out. And I don't think the Russians, everybody's trying to claim that Russia is going to want to continue. Well, if you look at when Germany, Putin was in Germany, and he was with the KGB, and he speaks German. He He understands that those people hated communism. Why would he want to have more people that have a hate the Russians to try to be doing the same thing that, as when it broke up? He understands that they don't want to be under the thumb of Russia. The last thing he wants to do is have a bunch of people that he's trying to control that hate him. He would rather just keep the borders, I believe, where they're at. Or if somebody wants to be a part of Russia, maybe that would go, but just to have trade. The biggest thing is the rich CIA-backed people, because you got Mossad, you got CIA, and MI6 are joined at the hip. So basically, and they want to support powerful people. A lot of people want to break Russia into pieces and exploit the resources. And so it's money and power, not necessarily everything that's caring, our end of it, caring about the average American. But we haven't been hit that hard, and hopefully we aren't economically. And I don't want to see the price of fuel go up too much or our lifestyle go down too much, or anything happen on our own soil. So let's hope people make good decisions. So, like, if I was Trump, I'd probably say, look, I can't support, any more weapons going to Ukraine, and try to be equitable. Russia just wants the Ukraine to stay neutral, not be part of NATO, because NATO was putting a lot of weapons, building up the army of Ukraine. So then the other thing I think was, one of the first things I would do is all these water bottles that, you buy huge packs of water bottles. I would kind of push more towards refillable, the big 3-gallon or 5-gallon water bottles that you process the water and refill it, and try to get away from disposable plastics, which are hard to recycle. And then that would be one of the things. But I would definitely reduce Trump said he was going to reduce at one point our military-industrial dependency by half, and expenditures. I would definitely start off by cutting it in half. I'm sorry to say, but aircraft carriers can be a target, and you sink one of those and lose 5,000 people. That's a tripwire for a nuclear war, damn near. So cut back on things that don't work, and also start working with people to reduce nuclear weapons. Now, if I was Russia, he has the Orishnik missile, which is Mach 8 or whatever. It goes faster than the speed of sound by multiple times. And, America, we kind of bombed some of the nuclear processing sites in Iran. But, God, I think, the illegal nuclear weapons that Israel has, maybe those should be destroyed in the same way. If they can do it without hurting a lot of people, say, you need to evacuate. We're going to get rid of your nuclear weapons capability. And then everybody needs to start reducing weapons as far as, mostly nuclear, but draw down everything and quit wasting all the money on ways to, kill each other. So that would be one of the things, and start working on things at home. Like, the CCC back in the 1930s. That money we could use to improve water retention and flood waters, and try to work on projects that help our own safety as far as natural disasters, our economy, and things. Instead of, I think Trump's creating a little more division than is necessary. It's one thing, trying to keep MS-13 out, but then to play it up as a big show and cause as much hate and discontent, and, getting people off the farms. Now he says, oh, well, maybe we should leave the farm labor, because most of the Americans don't want to do stoop labor for 8 or 10 hours a day. But so we need to work together and not spend so much, I think, on things as far as the military-industrial complex. I'm sorry, we're spending way too much on that, going way into debt. So let's work on projects at home, and that's what I would do if I was Trump. And then if I was Putin, I definitely apologize for that aircraft that went down. I don't know why Putin isn't doing that, because Azerbaijan is there's a lot of Turkish-speaking people, and Turkey. Oh, I don't know. The Ottomans, they did have some good arithmetic and a lot of things like that. But my friend that lived in Bulgaria, he said, man, 400 or however many hundreds of years the Ottomans were there, he said they treated the Bulgarians like slaves. So you could say a lot of things. And I know there was an Armenian genocide, and Turkey doesn't even want to admit to that around World War I. So people need to start, we don't need to agitate. The CIA is already agitating stuff where there's a little bit of hatred and they want to inflame things in other places, and Israel does too, to cause weakened states that are in chaos. We don't want chaos. We should be the ones that are saying, hey, we need to get past our differences and start working together. It's like when you do something good for somebody, they remember that and they'll do something good for you. But instead, we want these weakened, confused states, so that way we can get our new resources. We should do our own resources. There is so much methane hydrate under the sea, just north of Alaska, that we should be, getting that. And it's natural gas trapped in ice on the bottom of the seafloor. And the last time it melted, it accelerated global warming. We should use it in the shallowest areas that are going to get warmed first, because we don't want to accelerate global warming. And yet it's the cleanest of fossil fuels. We should use that. And also we should use carbon dioxide as a resource. And maybe be able to produce lumber artificially in molds. We could spend our money on other things other than, causing hate and discontent. And then there's a lot of other countries that have got their issues between them, other people themselves, and we should be trying to say, hey, let's find some common ground all across the world. Everybody needs to find common ground. The human race needs to show that we're here for a reason, not like two little children beating each other up, that are brothers and sisters, but actually helping each other out and helping the environment out as much as possible. And I'm not saying help it. There's common sense things, and then there's some people that you say, oh, I'm helping the environment, and they're just there to collect their money. Some serious stuff. I think FDR did some good things. He stopped the Dust Bowl. Some common sense things, and we can keep people employed. We need to stop the help people. I mean, I've seen hotels torn down that could have housed the homeless and have drug rehab programs and little work programs. I just don't know where our priorities are. I don't think they're here. They're just to fight weird causes that cause chaos overseas, and it's going to have blowback. We don't need that. Anyway, so I'm hoping that some of the leaders will find some common ground, and they're all kind of got their own agendas, and some agendas are parallel for the time being in certain areas like Israel and Turkey. But, the minute Israel starts falling apart, Turkey's going to come in and gobble Syria. Everybody just needs to slow down and find common ground and work towards something better, and clean out most of the CIA and a lot of the Pentagon, cut their expenses for creating hate and discontent overseas, we'll be able to take care of ourselves even with 20% of what we have for the military expenditure. Thanks. Anyway, talk to you later. Have a good day. All right, bye.